Hi, this is Dovid Orlofsky, and welcome to the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Thank you, studio audience. In honor of Hanukkah, we have a special studio audience for everybody to make you think that this is actually coming to you live, and actually this is all AI generated. And I don't know why, someone just showed me that there's some sort of thing now called the real Rabbi Orlofsky. I don't know what that is, but apparently there's a fake Rabbi Orlofsky out there. So there's an AI version of me. Whoever he is, I hope he's doing well. And this is our special Hanukkah podcast. This will be coming out right at the beginning of Hanukkah. And our sponsor this week is Ilui Nishmas, our mother and grandmother Rivka Bas Gavriel Chaim-Rita Grunberger. And this is, of course, by our good friends Avigdor and Mindy Fried, good friends of the show, have sponsored many episodes over the years, and they should all have only bracha v'hatzlacha and all good things, etc. And for everybody else out there, we have one sponsorship left, and then we may be going radio silent because there's nothing here. So I'm just going to be here going like this, holding up a little cup. So anyway, but we'll see. All right, so this is our special Hanukkah show. I've told this story before, but people seem to know almost everything. Every now and then, I have a little chabur of guys from the Mir who come Thursday night. We talk about things from the parsha. There's two guys there who know like everything I've ever said between the two of them, And I started to tell a story. I said, "Did you ever hear this one?" And they go, "No." I was like, "Oh my gosh, I still have some material left." It's like squeezing blood out of a rock, but every now and then you come up. I tell you the truth, I'm, married 43 years, and every now and then I tell a story. My wife's like, "I never heard that one," I was like, "Yeah, there you go." So I've been saving some things so you don't get bored before the 50th. After the 50th, I don't really care because I'll mostly forget where I am and what I'm saying. I'm almost there, but I have another 7 years till I'm totally out of it, and I end up, with one of those yarmulkes, My mother always used to say to me, "Why do you think when people get old they talk with a Yiddish accent?" And I said, "That's my experience." Anyway, so hello, mama, tata. Anyway, she goes, "You grew up in Long Island. Why do you have a Yiddish accent?" But anyway, I want to focus on one aspect that I can, and I've told this story before, as I mentioned. I grew up in a house where my parents worked yomim v'layla. They worked very hard. They had 6 boys at a time when that was not so mikubal to have large families. And my parents worked very hard, especially, at one point my father went bankrupt. I said, "When was that?" And my mother said, "Right around when you were born," because every child brings their own luck. But anyway, so my mother started going into work for them, and I grew up with my parents working, Mama Shalom V'Layla, to be able to support this family, And we were definitely not rich, but we were, middle class. So we had middle class accoutrements, And one of the way my father maintained this was by screaming at us to turn off all of the lights. This was very important. And he'd walk around the house turning off lights and he'd say, "Why are all the lights on?" And my whole life, I regret this decision. I really wanted to go to Lilco, which is Long Island Lighting Corporation, and bought 1 share of stock. So that when my father says to me, "What do you have stock in the electric company?" I could say, "Yep, right here, Dad." Like 1 share. Anyway, that, and nobody even knows what this is. But once upon a time, when you wanted a phone number, you called up 411. They would say, city and state. That was when it was international. When I first started, it was only local. And they'd say, business or residential. And you would tell them the name, and they would look it up. And this one comic, he says, "Could you imagine? Do they even have that still?" I would imagine if you call it up, they would go, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah. I went to a number of a Chinese restaurant within a mile of where I am." "Well, where are you?" "You tell me." because I can do that on my iPhone. And also tell me the 3 closest Chinese restaurants, and then send it to my 6 friends. No, you couldn't do that. You just called up and got a phone number. My father would go crazy. It was 10 cents. He says, you have a phone book. Look up the number, If I needed $1,000 for something really important, my father would pull it out of his pocket without a word. But if I called information, forget about it. It was World War III, So my father grew up during the Depression. There was no food. Not like today a kid comes home from school and says, Mom, there's nothing to eat and the refrigerator is full. I mean, there was no food. My grandmother used to hide some money away to be able to buy milk for the children. It was really a tsaris. It was a terrible situation. There was no food, Pasha. And that was his attitude, But we had basically, a pretty comfortable existence to be able to, have certainly all the basics and things. My parents worked very hard. So special occasions were rare. We would have a Pesach Seder, but my father was in the flower business, and it usually came out around Easter, which was busy, and he'd come home late at night. That's when we had the Seder. The house, they made it kosher at Pesach, and he'd start the Seder whenever he came home. It was like that. Friday night, especially in the winter, Lich Benchen could be 4:15, 4:20, My parents wouldn't come home until 8:30. Now, even before I became frum, my father always, Friday night, would make kiddush and hamotzi and challahs, and we would have brisket and gefilte fish and, have a suda, That was even before me, but now I'd come home from shul at 5 o'clock, so I'd have to, I could either wait until then to make kiddush, or I make kiddush and I can eat and then bench and then wait till my dad comes home and then, pretend to do it all over again, which is what I usually did because I knew it was important to him, But we didn't have a normal schedule. That was how it was. So Hanukkah, when I was growing up, my parents used to put the electric menorah in the window. That was very exciting. But of course, we would also light candles in the dining room. But it was whenever they came home. And remember, this is around another very popular holiday, which is very busy in the flower business. My brothers would go into the store and sell Christmas trees. One year, my father asked me to work he had another florist selling Christmas trees. I was not successful at this. I did everything right. I put on a pair of jeans and a lumberjack jacket and a cap, and I would schlep out all the trees and I would try to sell them. I didn't sell any. It was in a little mall in Flatbush. I guess there's not a lot of Christmas trees being sold in Flatbush back then. And there was a drugstore there. From guy owned it. And he used to come out every now and then and watch me sitting there with the trees. And one time he calls me over, he says, Kid, I'm going to give you a piece of advice. If you sell Christmas trees, tuck in your tzitzis. Now, I don't know if that's the reason that I wasn't so good at selling it. I just didn't have a gift for it, All the boys used to go into the store on Sunday and help my father, And after I came in for like a month or two, he said, do me a favor, stay home and help your mother instead, That's... I used to remember when he would do things around the house. I say, Dad, can I help? He says, you want to help? Don't help, So I would be home and I would light the menorah by myself. And that's what it was. I'd sing Neres Halalu and Ma'az Tzur and, sometimes I would buy myself a gift and open it, and it was a little depressing, but, But my birthdays were like that, too. My mom would leave me money, and she'd say, buy yourself a present and wrap it up. We'll open it when you get home. Okay, that's wonderful, So I had to look surprised, which was a little hard because I had just bought it, But no. These should be, everybody's tzaras should be that, But that's how I remember Hanukkah. And then I went to Yeshiva, and in the middle of Seder, we would stop, and everybody would go out and light the menorah. And this was in Eretz Yisrael. And Chavetz Chaim in the old days were Chovas Sanhedrin Sheish. And we would all light our menorahs, and then we would all sing Haneres Halalu, and we would all sing Ma'az Tzur. And when we got to Yevanim, we would all dance. Yevanim, Yevanim, Nikbetzu Alai. That's how I remembered Hanukkah. It was like, to me, this was completely different than, obviously, the experience I had growing up alone on Hanukkah. It's interesting. In NCSY, we used to do Shabbatonim. And a Shabbaton is not representative of an average Shabbos. It's just not, right? It's singing and there's dancing and there's all kinds of things going on, you know. Many places on Shabbos, you eat as quickly as you can, you go to sleep, you know, as early as you can, and you just wait for it to be over, right? This is a whole celebration. So I was doing a Shabbaton once in a particular shul, and the Rebbitzin says to the Rav, well, actually said to me in front of the Rav, said, "This is nice, but you should show these kids what a real Shabbos looks like." And the Rav said, "Why? Let them think this is what Shabbos is supposed to be. What they have to see, the father falling asleep at the table reading the paper, you know what I mean? And, you know, and all the teenagers going to sit on the couch and walking away and the whole thing. Let them think that Shabbos is singing and dancing and celebrating and beautiful. Let them think that's what Shabbos is supposed to be." So, because this was my memory of what Hanukkah is supposed to be. Now, I don't know what Hanukkah is like in a regular house. I only had my own house, yeah. But when I got married and we started having kids, I did what I did in my yeshiva. Everybody would light their menorahs, and I don't know how it works in America, but if there are any ganenets out there who make little menorahs for these children to take home, please, for the love of God, put in little metal things that fit the candle. You put in these enormous metal things. We have these tiny little candles, and I'm sitting there with a match, melting them on the little thing. And then, of course, if you move one, they all tumble over, and I go back again, melting on the little things. Why can't you just get a menorah where it sticks in and fits? And everyone has to use their menorah because they're very emotional about it. I can't solve all the world's problems. But if when I die, I can say that every gan only makes menorahs for the children that the little Hanukkah candles fit in, then I know that my life was not wasted in this world. That's all that I would like to do. That's it. And that's how I want to be remembered, you know? And Rabbi Orlofsky managed to change the menorahs coming out of the ganim for the little kids. So no one ever again had to get hot wax melted onto their fingers as they were setting up the little menorahs. Oh, I know that doesn't sound like much, but the guy who invented the Pringles can, that's all they talked about when he died, you know? The whole thing was he was the one who invented the Pringle can and he based it on a tennis ball can and this and that. Could you imagine you look back at your life and that's what you remember? I made the Pringles can, you know, which I guess is better than the guy who wrote the Hokey Pokey. Because when the guy who wrote the Hokey Pokey died, I remember reading the obituary. He says, I was at the funeral and first they put his left foot in and that's when all the trouble started. I love that joke. Anyway, so I would make my home based on the experience that I had, you know, that we would all light the menorah and we would sing, and when we came to Yavanim, we would dance, and the kids, when the kids were little, they loved it. Then they became adolescents, and I am far too cool to do this. I remember Dave Barry, who was a humorist out of the Miami Herald, who used to write books, and one of them was a travel guide. And there was a little chapter, Traveling with Teenagers. And it says, you have to gear the trip to teenagers, right? Going, you know, what you want to do. Go to the Grand Canyon and look at the spectacular view. What a teenager wants to do. Not go to the Grand Canyon, look at the spectacular view. What you want to do, you know, go to the painted desert and the petrified forest. What a teenager wants to do, not go to do nothing, you know, sit in the back seat with their earphones on and say, I'm bored, you know. So it's challenging. So they would leave, and then when they get older, they would come back in, and it was very exciting. And on Zos Hanukkah, we would actually do a big dance and we'd sing all the Hanukkah songs. It became a whole to-do. And it's the kind of thing where you want to try to give people a feeling that there's something special taking place. So, as we would sing Yivanim every year, there is an aspect of it that I would like to draw out if I can. Yeah? Yivanim, Yivanim, nikbatzu alai, alai b'yamei chashmanim. Right? The Greeks came up against us. Upartzu chomos, chomos migdalai, v'timu koshmanim. And they broke down the walls, and they were matame our oil. That seems like a strange thing to do. I imagine there they were in their headquarters. These were the Syrian Greeks. So maybe someplace outside of Damascus. Maybe it was in Antioch. I don't know exactly where their headquarters were. And they said, we have to stop the Jewish people, get them to assimilate and to become Hellenists. What do you think we should do? And one of them said, what if we were matame all of their oil? Brilliant! Who came up with that plan? Spartacus? Let's free that guy. All right, so let's send out the troops. Spartacus, Eradicus, Hepatitis, everybody. Let's get out there and matame the oil. And they go around and tame. They were matame all of the oil. Which is why when we finally captured the Harabayas and Yehuda Maccabee said, find me Taha oil, they were like, didn't you hear the song? V'timu koshmanim. They were matame all the oil. There is no Taha oil anymore. Why would you do that? Partzu chomos migdalai, you broke down the walls, which, by the way, this is the only ghost where they didn't destroy the Beis Hamikdash. The Babylonians did, the Romans did, the Greeks did not. All they did was make 13 breaks in the Chil, which was the wall that separated on the Har Bayis beyond which non-Jews could not go. And they didn't break it down. They made 13 breaches in the wall, and they were matame all the oil. You got to admit, that's strange. Why would you do that? Yeah. So, the Greeks had a mission, and this was different than any enemy we had encountered to that point. Because we went into Gullus for 70 years. Paras, Bavel, Modai, we knocked off all three of them in 70 years. But the Greeks came in and challenged us in a way. It was the only Gullus that was in Eretz Yisrael. Babylonians exiled us, the Romans exiled us. Persia didn't want to let us go back to Eretz Yisrael. They didn't want to let us rebuild the Beis Hamikdash. But Yavan did not try to exile us. They did not try to destroy the Beis Hamikdash. They wanted to change the way we lived. And this was unusual. We had not encountered an enemy like this who was philosophically motivated. Haman wanted to wipe us out, men, women, and children. He wanted to kill us all. He wanted to perform genocide on innocent people. Yeah, to wipe the Jewish people off the face of the earth. That was his plan. The Greeks did not. The Greeks wanted to break holes in our walls, and they wanted to matame all of our oil. So let's speak for a moment about oil. 40, maybe 50 years ago, my mom had a copy of a cookbook called The Joy of Cooking. This was the cooking Bible for many, many years. I don't know if it's still around anymore. I heard they changed it. I remember it had like everything in it. If you wanted to make a champagne fountain, so you would pour it in the top glass and it would go down into all the glasses. They had a picture exactly how to do that. Very worthwhile, I thought. They had a section on how to properly skin and prepare a bear, which is not something you find in your average cookbook, right? In my cookbook, there will be no bear, yeah? There won't even be bear claws, because that's too complicated. I don't make anything that's, I have to bring it out onto the show, but I have these guys who I learned with, and one of them brought me an apron that says, "It's easy, stupid," which was my mother's mantra and how she taught me how to cook. So I only make easy things. I don't make anything too complicated. But it was really interesting. Anyway, in the section on salads, it described the correct way to make a salad. Stick with me here, if you will. Yeah. Now, this is a standard salad back from the old days, from 50 years ago, where you made, your own homemade sort of salad dressing. There wasn't any mayonnaise in it. It was oil and vinegar and spices and lemon juice. Those kind of things. So here's the correct way. Before you do anything, you tear the lettuce. You don't cut the lettuce. You tear the lettuce, the different greens, right? Chicory, escarole, whatever it is, radicchio. You tear them into bite-sized pieces, preferably in a wooden bowl. And then you add the oil first. And you coat the greens with it. And then you add the other vegetables. And then you mix up all the other ingredients in a cruet, and then you pour it on top. And that way the oil coated the leaves, and all of the rest of the dressing sticks to the salad. This happens to be the Rabbi Orlofsky show at the best, because sometimes I give recipes and sometimes I give Divrei Torah, but when I can combine the two, then we know that it's food for thought. That's awful. Anyway, but the reason you don't put it all in together is because when you put the oil and everything in and you shake it up, the oil will separate. And that's why when you buy commercial salad dressing, you'll notice one of the ingredients is xanthium gum. Now, I don't know what xanthium gum is, but it's some sort of a thing that lets the oil and the other ingredients stick together, glues it together. But normally, if you put anything in, the oil will float to the top. Yeah, I just had this the past Shabbos when I made my fresh pesto. I don't know if I ever gave my pesto recipe. I don't know if I did. I apologize for repeating. You take basil, buy fresh basil. You remove the leaves because the stems can be bitter. So remove all the leaves. And I get the bug-free one, Nonetheless, you wash it and you dry it, etc. For every cup of leaves, you add a half a cup of pine nuts and 3 to 4 cloves of garlic. I always add 4. And then salt and pepper to taste. And then you put it into your food processor, and as you mix it up, you pour in olive oil until it is thick and totally mixed, and then you keep adding olive oil. This is the mistake that I made. Because you say to yourself, well, this is all done, but it's going to congeal in the refrigerator. So you have to add more oil to the point where you think to yourself, that's a terrible mistake. That's how I measure it. When I put in oil and I say, that's a terrible mistake, that's the right amount. And then afterwards you scoop it out and it sits in the fridge and it congeals a little bit. But I left it in the fridge, and when we served it for Shabbos lunch, the oil had already begun to separate, rise to the top. That's the nature of oil, it separates. And this is what Hanukkah is all about. Pesto. No. What was it? Well, it makes sense. No, that's Italian. This would be Greek. Anyway, but what's it about? We did this in a question and answer. Someone said, why do we eat so many, unhealthy foods on Hanukkah? We don't eat unhealthy food. We eat food with olive oil, right? Because the miracle took place with olive oil. So we have foods that are cooked in olive oil. So in Ashkenazic tradition, we would have potato latkes. which we would fry in oil and eat them. Why would we fry potatoes? Because that's all they had. They had potatoes, they had onions, sometimes they had turnips, sometimes they had beets. It was only root vegetables, and not really green vegetables. That's why you have these people who still have the minhag for karpas that they use a potato. Potato, it says you're supposed to use a green vegetable for the springtime. If your potato is green, that's not good, right? But they used potatoes because that's all they had. It was adama. So on Pesach, they pretended that it was a green vegetable, and in Hanukkah, we fried them in oil, and the rest of the time, we used them for lawn furniture, and that was it. All we had were potatoes. That was it. Roots. They kept the roots there, you know. That's why, even though the Gemara makes it clear that horseradish is not the first choice for maror, we used to use it because it was a root vegetable, so they had it. They didn't have greens in March and April, and in Eastern Europe, the ground was still frozen. You know, they didn't have green vegetables. You know, so I'll never forget when I went to day school. Parents sent me to day school, and at some point we were learning Hilchos Pesach, and they said you're supposed to use romaine lettuce. But if you use horseradish, then you have to grind it up because there's no way to eat it, unless it's ground up. So my father would, of course, put out chunks of horseradish for us. And I'd say, Dad, we learned in school you can't do that because you can't eat it that way. And he says, ah, yeah? And he's sitting there munching away, because his father came from Poland, and that's how they made them back then. I told this to a friend of mine. He says, my father is also from Poland, you know. He says, you know, when you're making the charoses and you're grinding up the apple and you take a little piece, you know, he would sit there with a piece of maror chewing it along as he was making it. You know, it was like a snack food. You know, maror, not just for breakfast anymore, you know. So they would just sit there and munch away at it, you know. But that's all they had. They had roots, you know. So we fried them in oil. In more of the Sephardic tradition, they would take dough and fry it in oil. In Israel, they call them sufganiyot, which is mistranslated into English as jelly donuts. Go to any bakery in the New York area. I'm not a bucky in all of the bakeries, but any bakery in the New York area, any kosher bakery, go in there and ask for a jelly donut. It's sort of thin and light and cakey and, moist, and it's got some nice little jelly inside, you know, and a little powdered sugar on the top, you know. Here, Angel's Bakery saves all the old challah rolls and then soaks them in oil long enough that you could recreate the Hanukkah miracle if you stick a wick in it. And then they put a little powdered sugar on top. The reason is for people like me, who always make fun of sufganiyot. And they put the powdered sugar on so that it gets all over you and everyone knows that you're a liar and you do eat the sufganiyot, even though you make fun of them. And if you get it on your jacket or your pants, there's nothing you can do. You brush it off and it just forms a glaze. So everybody sees from the shine that you had the sufganiyot, you know. Forget about it if the jelly drops on your shirt. It's all for fallen, you know. You've given up already. I hope you appreciate, by the way, I put on my oil tie so that it should look Hanukkah-dick. Thank you. So we have foods that are fried in oil. Why? Because the story is based on oil. Because oil doesn't mix. And that's the point that the Greeks went after, was our oil. Because they were going to enforce a certain uniformity on the entire world. The Babylonians didn't care whether we worshiped their gods, neither did the Persians. Nobody cared. That wasn't it. They weren't trying to force an idea on us. They wanted our money, they wanted our possessions. Nebuchadnezzar wanted our wisdom for us to teach. But the Greeks believed that they were the elite of the world, that they would bring to the world what we today call Western civilization, sports, and universities, science, literature, theater, all the trappings of Western civilization that they brought to the world, they wanted everybody to accept it, and it was successful. Egypt, which had been a monarchy with whatever their culture was for many, many years. When we were down in Mitzrayim, they were a world power. They were considered an unbelievable force of nature. The Greeks captured them and made them Greek. So Alexandria, named after Alexander the Great, became a Greek city. Cleopatra, right, slowly became Greek and then Roman. They managed to change the entire world to their philosophy. And all we said was, good luck, friends, just leave us alone. Leave us alone. And we were a thorn in their side. You think you're better than us? You Jews? Now, to be fair, a lot of Jews fell for the message. The assimilation was terrible. People were being absorbed into Greeks. They became known as the Misyavnim. They later turned into the Tzadukim. But these were people who thought we should adopt Greek culture and Greek ways and Greek wisdom. Josephus says that they used to wrestle naked in the gymnasiums, and the Jews were embarrassed because they had a bris milah. And that was an embarrassment among the Greeks because the Greeks worshiped the human body. That's one of the reasons we eat foods cooked in oil, to show we don't. You know what I'm saying? We're not going to look like those Greeks. We're going to look like Jews. Hello! With a corned beef sandwich. Hello! But they worship the human body. Parenthetically, the Israeli army adopted the British physical standard for their pilots. And for many years, an Israeli pilot never got 100 on his physical because you lose 1 point if you're circumcised. It's seen as an embarrassment to have to do that. Today, there are a lot of people who do it. They think it's healthier. They think whatever it is to be able to do it. If you remember, I had my friend Mike Ravinsky on the show, who was a moil who does thousands of brisim for non-Jews because they'd prefer to use a moil over a doctor because a moil has more experience than the average doctor, interestingly enough. And that's why there was Yosela, who was the famous moil here in Yerushalayim. They used to call him Lightning. I was at brisim that he did. Now I've been at brisim that his son Moshe does. And the kid doesn't have a chance to cry. He didn't realize what was happening. He was like, whoa, what was that? And it's all done already. They're bandaging him up. When Hadassah would have a difficult question on a circumcision, they would call him in because they understood that his expertise was greater than theirs. But the Jews were embarrassed. So they would go through some kind of a medical procedure to make it look like they didn't have a bris milah. Now, I don't know what this was, but apparently it was so painful, says Josephus, that people ended up committing suicide from the pain. But they were willing to risk it just not to be embarrassed, because they wanted to be part of the dominant culture. We didn't really want to be Babylonians or Persians. That wasn't too exciting. But to be a Greek with their art and literature and sports and theater and all of their philosophy, everything that went along with this was a tremendous taiva Greek philosophy. Someone asked me once, I want to go study Greek philosophy. What's wrong with Plato? I said, it's almost impossible to get out of the carpet. But I don't think that was his question. Anyway, I love that joke. But anyhow, the fact is that Jews were being sucked into this. Oil doesn't mix. They wanted to metame the oil. You have a wall in the base of Mikdash where non-Jews can't go? No. We will break that down to show you that we're all the same, all part of the family of nations, and you will be part of us. And we say, just leave us alone. That's all we want. That's what we want. It's interesting, the Rambam says that the war was fought by the Kohanim Gedolim. Well, not really, right? There's Matisyo and there's Yochanan Kohen Gadol. Those are the only two Kohen Gadol's that we experience in the story. We know we had the Maccabee brothers. We know we had other people who were involved in this. But it was definitely the Kohanim who were the spearhead. Why? Because the Kohanim are the most separate group of people within the Jewish people. They eat truma, nobody else can eat truma. They have to make sure that nobody touches their truma. They can't go to funerals. They can't become tamei. They have to be very careful what they do, where they go, what they touch. People complain about Pesach. Oh, I have to worry about Pesach and this and chametz. That's nothing. Wait till Tuma and Torah kick in. Every place you sit, one second, did a Zav or a Nida sit here, you know? You understand, you know, someone's tummy in your house, and like I say, you know, if you have a wife and daughters like I do, forget about it. I can't sit anywhere, I can't go anywhere. And at the end, you take the whole house and you toivel it. Take the couches, take all of the clothes, take all of the kalim, you know. If you have a wagon, you drive it, they had drive-through mikvahs, you drive it right through, you know what I mean? So everything was an avatuma because, you know, Nida sits in it, you know. And that's why they know that they found in the old city, when they were digging up, they knew it was a Kohen house if they found stone kalim. Of course, stone can't be makabel tumah. When Mashiach comes, we're going to be making special stone Rabbi Orlofsky mugs for our Kohanim listeners. Everybody else has the Kli Cheres. If it gets tamei, you smash it, which I think is good for sales. Anyway, there's no way to mataya Kli Cheres. But it's a constant. My favorite name of a parak in all of Shas is in Shkolim, Kol HaRoikin. All of the spittle. What is the rule of spittle? You're walking down the street and there's some wet spittle and you step in it. Forget about the gross factor. If that was spit out by a zav or a zava, it's an avatuma and you're a tamei. You know what that is when you have to get on the bus and somebody bumps into you and say, I'm sorry, are you a zav? It's a little personal question, but I got to know, because if so, you know. It was unbelievable, you know. The Mishnah in Shkolim says that most of the meat that was eaten in Yerushalayim was korban shlomim. You know what you have to do to become tamei? Just hezek hadas, just forget. Don't pay attention. And they have to go to the mikveh again. And that's why you see when they dig up, they find like 2 houses and 3 mikvahs. Because every time you wanted to eat something, you had to go to the mikveh. That's where they wore robes and turbans and sandals. It didn't pay to get dressed, you know what I mean? You were going into the mikveh and coming out, you know, drying yourself up, just put on the robe, you know. And then someone says, hey, how's it going? He says, not bad. What about you? Yeah, oh, I'm sorry. I got to go back to the mikveh. You know, so that's it. I got this shlomim sandwich sitting here on my truma bread, and I just sitting there waiting for me, you know. And you got to keep your focus. All of Klal Yisrael has to wash their hands before they eat bread, on the off chance that you sit down next to a Kohen who has truma and you touch his truma, and you're yadayim or askonios. So even if you're toho, we assume your hands are tamei, so you have to wash your hands. So you wait till Tum and Tara kick in. And so Kohanim have to maintain themselves in a state of Tahara and Kedusha, not like anybody else. You know, I have to say, it is difficult as a Kohen that I don't get to go to funerals. because I love going to funerals. Anyway, I have left in my tzava, and I'm saying this publicly because all of you out there who care about me, make sure, no matter what my family says, I don't want any hespedim, because the person's still conscious after he's dead until he goes up to Shemayim. And I hate speeches. I know people said to me already they want to give a hesped. I don't want to hesped them. Just put me in the ground as quickly as possible, make a shloshim. I'll be gone. I'll be in one place or the other by that point. You know what I mean? And that's it. Have everybody and their brother speak. Put it in a nice room with some coffee and cake. And that's it. Don't make people stand outside in the heat or the cold or it's raining and make a bunch of speeches. I don't need any speeches. Baruch Hashem, I've gotten enough hespedim in my life already, and if anybody wants, they can go back and watch my podcast. So my wife said, someone has to speak. I said, I'll record a message. Hey, everybody. So, I don't know how you guys are feeling, but I'm just dead. I've been working this over in my head. I have a lot of good lines. Anyway, I don't want it to go on too long. That's the whole point, So Kohanim are separate. They stay separate. More separate than Kohanim are Kohen Gadol. Now, the Kohen Gadol doesn't even go to his parents' funeral. Nothing. He's not allowed to go to any funerals, anything. At least, you're allowed to go to the 7 relatives, your parents, child, a spouse, a sibling. So you're allowed to go to their funerals, but a Kohen Gadol not for anything. So the idea was, it's the people who are most separate, who were most sensitive to what was taking place. And so the Kohanim are more separate than the Yisraelim, and the Kohen Gadol is more separate. And the only one who's more separate than that are the women. And that's why when the Gemara says, women are chayev and the menorah ki af hein ba'oso hanes, says the Rashbam, Tosfos brings down, not that they were also in the miracle, they were the reason for the miracle. And the Medrash tells the story of Bas Kohen Gadol, where they had a rule that the Roman governor could choose to have first rights with any kala. And wouldn't be also because it was ones. And anyway, it was at this wedding, and they hear the governor is coming. And they're like, okay, what can you do? And, we paskin it's mutter, and there's nothing you can do. Well, the kala apparently was not quite with the program. And she came out, I guess to sit in her kala chair, wearing not her wedding dress, but rather her birthday suit. Well, it's a Kohen Gadol's daughter. You can imagine how this scandalized everybody. Oy vey. And she said, oh, I forgot. You are so frum, you would never let me be seen like this, but you don't mind turning me over to the Greek governor like this. Ooh. And that got the Kohanim crazy. So when the governor came, they killed him, and that's what started the rebellion. Because the women sensed it more. Parzu chomos mugdalai, from the Lashon of Pritzes. And they're women with their tznius, and Kohanim more tznius than that, than the average person. It filtered down, didn't reach the average folk. But all of the people who understood what it means to be different and separate were moved by this experience in order to make it something that would be, we don't want to be assimilated. We don't want to be absorbed into your culture. We have our own culture. Josephus writes, we Jews are not given to the writing of many books. The Torah has always been our form of entertainment. We don't need your theater and your sports and your all of your other accoutrements. The Torah itself is our life. It's what we enjoy. It's where we get our pleasure from. At least that's what it's supposed to be. And one of the reasons that we lose our appeal for Torah is because Greek civilization pulls us away. That's the darkness of Yavan, where it fills us with a non-Jewish spirit. takes us away. Elisha ben Avuya, who became known as Acher, the Gemara says one of the reasons was that he always had Greek books with him, and he was always singing Greek songs, and that reached the point where it ended up pulling him away from HaKadosh Baruch Hu and from Torah. And so we go into Hanukkah, and we are surrounded by a major culture that wants to absorb us. There is a psychological syndrome. I forgot what it's called, but it's Jewish kids feeling this sense of depression when the holidays come around. Because as much as we like to sit and light our little menorah, you can't compare that to a giant tree and fancy lights. I have been to places in America where they cover their house outside with lights and giant blow-up menorahs and giant dreidels, to try to, emulate it. But Hanukkah's never been about that. It's not the show, it's for internally that we light those candles for ourselves. It's just the opposite. We're not trying to show the world. We're not trying to compete. I used to run NCSY in Long Island, and the different chapters would come up with, different programming they would tell me. So it was during December time, and they said, we made a great program. We went into Manhattan to go to the ice skating in Rockefeller Park outside of the tree, and then we went around looking at all the Christmas decorations in the department stores. I said, I don't know if that's exactly the message we're trying to give across, that we want to have this. Apparently, I didn't see it, but someone told me Saturday Night Live, Santa Claus couldn't come, so Harry Hanukkah filled his place. And he comes down, and everyone's like, he goes, hello, how are you? It's Harry Hanukkah, it's good to see you all. He goes, where's Santa? Santa couldn't make it, So I'm filling in for him. He says, did you bring us gifts? He goes, yes, here. They open it up and they go, socks? You brought us socks? He goes, don't keep your feet warm. That's what the old joke used to be. He says, we get presents for 8 days. Because but we get socks one day, underwear another day. It's not like they got a computer. You know what I mean? It's a different kind of thing. Yeah, because Hanukkah is not about the presents. That's not what it's about. Hanukkah is not about the spectacles and the big trees and the all those public celebrations. It's just the opposite. Leave us alone. For years, in recent years, the Jewish people have been accepted in the family of nations. We had an Orthodox Jew in the year 2000 who ran for vice president. And when he got nominated, his statement was, I'm going to give 24/6 to this campaign, but not Shabbos. Of course not, And everybody was amazed by this attitude. And one of the major political commentators is Ben Shapiro, an Orthodox Jew, wears a yarmulke, And there's a chassid, I don't remember his name, but he sings popular songs, not Jewish songs, popular songs. He's supposed to have a beautiful voice. He did the Star Spangled Banner at a baseball game, Shalom Lama. So Jews were being accepted everywhere. And then Hamas came in and killed over 1,200 Israelis and captured hundreds of others. And now everyone says, because of that, we hate you. And they hated us right away. Had nothing to do with genocide. Right at the beginning, there were college students putting up pictures of the hostages, and people were ripping them down. Why would you rip down a picture of a hostage? They didn't do anything. They're being held hostage. Old men, little babies, why would you rip down their pictures? Because they hate us, and now they have some kind of excuse why they can do it. But they always hated us. There's nothing new about this. Victor Davis Hansen says, the way you know it's anti-Semitism is just listen to their arguments. Well, the Jews are occupying Palestinian land. He says, so you must hate Turkey. They're occupying half of Cyprus. They've been doing it for years. Does that bother you? You know, the genocide. He says, the Turks have been murdering the Kurds for years. They wiped out the Armenians. Are you angry at Turkey? You know, Sudan has actual slavery. Does that bother you? No. So if you criticize something that Israel's doing and you don't criticize anybody else, that's how you know it's anti-Semitism. On all of the arguments that they bring. And it's out of the bag now. There's a guy, Nick Fuentes, you know, who's a neo-Nazi and he loves Hitler and there was Stalin and, you know, and says, oh, the Jews are the source of all the problems and all this kind of stuff. And now he's on regular talk shows. People have them on. They interview him, treat him as if he's a Bardeya. You know? And Victor Davis Hanson said, I don't have a problem if you interview him, but you have to be critical. Not just let him say whatever he wants. And then go, oh, really? Oh, is that right? Oh, okay, you know? Which is what people have been doing. That's ridiculous. But this is coming from an inherent hatred. So this Hanukkah is a Hanukkah like one we haven't had in many years. We can actually be that oil where we separate from everybody else. We will celebrate Hanukkah, and nobody celebrates with us. That's what Bilam said when his curses were turned into brachas. Yeah, you're a nation that lives alone. When you celebrate, nobody celebrates along with you. Nobody celebrates your victories. Nobody mourns your losses. Nobody cares at all. That's where we are. And so the Greeks wanted to matame our oil, wanted to destroy our individuality, wanted to make us give up what makes us special. And we, stubborn Jews, are still here, and we refuse to play their game. Oh, my producer sends me some nice emails. I just read them. Hi, I'm a 29-year-old Avrech, originally from Jacksonville, Florida! Exclamation mark. Now, I'm not sure what the exclamation is if you come from Jacksonville, Florida. Now, I did do a Shabbos in Jacksonville. I had a very nice time. It was lovely. And I'm happy to go back if they invite me. But he's from Jacksonville, Florida, exclamation mark. That is fully involved in Zikoi Harabim Kirev, with many thanks to my Rebbe's Rabbi, Reb Moshe Shapiro Zatzal. Yeah, I recently got very involved in your show, and it is a tremendous chizuk for me, especially how you are just so real and yourself. I have tried to be other people, but I end up having to pay more taxes. You should have tremendous success in health and take over the world completely. Now we're talking. That's the first thing you said that really hits home. Here's another one. Thank you so much for your shiurim and shows. I'm addicted to them. Okay. In fact, this week, after I watched the episode on Torah Anytime, I felt it was a tease. I wanted much more. So I went back and listened to 10 random shiurim and shows. I still, again, didn't get bored. I'm loving every minute. Somebody once told me back in the old days when they used to make Torah tapes, if anybody's old enough to remember that, you know, there was a time when they had like magnetic tape, and they had records, right? Records were originally like a tube, and then afterwards they made these discs, and then they made small discs, 45s. You could get just like one song on each side, you know. And then of course they moved to cassette tapes. It was a big step forward. And then they moved to CDs, and then they moved to downloads. And now Elon Musk is going to put something in your brain and just download it instantly just by thinking. But they had cassette tapes. So somebody used to say to me, I always buy your cassette tapes because they're the best investment. Because a normal Torah shir, you listen to it, that's it, it's over, you know. But with yours, you can listen to it over and over again. So thank you for that observation. And it's certainly true. I personally, as I mentioned, I can't stand speeches, but I enjoy listening to myself. And I do listen to my own shiurim, and I'm like, whoa. Because I don't remember what I say. I have no memory, And I was like, oh, that was really good. To ask a question, I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I going to answer that? I was like, oh, that's brilliant. Anyway, that's it for this week. I listen to Hanukkah, everybody. If you want to find out more about the show, you can go to my website, RabbiOrlofsky.com. You can sponsor an episode. We only have one sponsor left, so we need your help. You can sign up for one of our online shiurim. You can sponsor a Parsha and 5, sponsor a question and answer. There's other material up there. You can sign up for our Pesach program, which is in full swing. Baruch Hashem, it looks like it's going nicely. I just got a call from somebody who said, oh, I'm so glad. I've been waiting to sign up. It's going to be a lot of fun. And Nov Kinneret, you can get the information up on my website. And that's it for now. Until next time, I am Dovid Orlofsky, and this has been the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.
It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. The Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Knowledge and wisdom will help you grow. Lots of fun in every episode. And we don't have to rhyme. No, we don't. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show on RabbiOrlofsky.com. Torah, anytime, YouTube and more. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Till next time, till we meet again. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.